The Great Hall of Nexus Prime buzzed with excitement. Representatives from 12 different species filled the massive chamber, their voices creating a symphony of celebration. Today marked 1,000 years since the last human had died, and the galaxy had never been more peaceful. Council leader Zeftar stood at the center podium, his crystal body catching the light from distant stars. His people, the Velthari, were made of living mineral that sparkled like diamonds. When he spoke, his voice rang like music through the hall. "My fellow beings," Zeftar announced, "we celebrate not death, but life. For 1,000 years, our galaxy has known true peace. No more wars, no more destruction, no more chaos." The crowd cheered. Ambassador Thakron of the Kresh Empire nodded his massive head. His people had once been fierce warriors with sharp teeth and claws. Now they were successful traders who solved problems with contracts instead of weapons. The change had happened slowly after humans disappeared. Near the back of the hall, the Zendai representatives whispered among themselves. These tall, thin beings had once hidden behind powerful shields. Afraid to trust anyone, now they traveled freely between worlds, sharing their advanced technology with others. They too had changed when humanity vanished. In a quiet corner sat the strangest member of the council. Lyra Chen 9 looked human, but everyone knew she was an artificial being created by the extinct race. She had dark hair and brown eyes, just like the humans in old pictures. But she never aged, never got sick, and could interface directly with computers. Lyra served as keeper of the Human Memorial Embassy. It was a sad job that nobody else wanted. She tended gardens that no one visited, and maintained records of a species that everyone preferred to forget. Most council members treated her with polite pity. She was a relic from darker times. The humans believed in something called survival of the fittest. Zeftar continued his speech. They thought conflict made species stronger. But look at us now. Trade routes span the entire galaxy. Scientific breakthroughs happen every day. Art and culture flourish on 1,000 worlds. It was true. The Dominion fleet, once a military force, now protected trade ships and explored new worlds peacefully. The science collective shared discoveries freely instead of hoarding secrets. Even the most aggressive species had found better ways to compete. We learned that cooperation, not conflict, leads to greatness, Zeftar said. The galaxy is proof that some evolutionary paths lead to dead ends. Humans chose violence. We chose wisdom. Lyra felt something twist in her programming when she heard those words. Her creators had been complex beings with both good and bad qualities. But over the centuries, the Council had simplified human history. They remembered only the wars, not the art. Only the weapons, not the music. Only the destruction, not the amazing things humans had built. The celebration reached its peak with a display of the galaxy's achievements. Holographic images showed beautiful cities floating in space, peaceful meetings between former enemies, and scientific wonders that seemed like magic. Everything was perfect. Then the warning alarms began to sound. The music stopped. Conversations died. Everyone looked at the massive display screens that covered the walls of the chamber. Red symbols flashed across star maps, showing the outer edge of the galaxy. "Unknown contacts approaching," announced the station's AI in a calm voice. "Multiple vessels detected. Configuration unknown. Technology unknown. Origin unknown." Admiral Vexi High of the Dominion fleet stepped forward. His people looked like large insects with 4 arms and compound eyes. "Probably a new species making first contact," he said. "We have protocols for this." Zeftar nodded. "Send the standard greeting. Universal translator. Peaceful intentions. All the usual diplomatic measures. This is probably just another species ready to join our galactic community." But Lyra felt something different happening in her systems. Her sensors, designed by human engineers 1,000 years ago, detected energy patterns that seemed familiar, yet impossible. The approaching ships used technology that registered as both ancient and incredibly advanced. "Sir," called the communications officer, "we're receiving a response to our greeting." "Put it through," Zeftar ordered. The chamber fell silent as a voice spoke in perfect galactic standard. The accent was strange, with sounds that hadn't been heard in 1,000 years. "Nexus Prime Control, this is Captain Jin Sato of the vessel New Horizon. We request permission to dock for diplomatic contact. Transmitting authorization code Delta 77 Alpha Earth Prime." The chamber erupted in confused chatter. Earth Prime had been the designation for humanity's home government. But that was impossible. Humans were extinct. Their homeworld was a dead rock circling a dying star. Lyra's systems nearly overloaded as she processed the authorization code. It was real. It was authentic. It was a code that only she and a few other human-created AIs would recognize. But how could it still exist after so long? "This has to be some kind of mistake," Admiral Vexhai said. "Or a trick. Humans have been gone for 1,000 years. Could be scavengers who found old human technology," suggested Ambassador Thakron. "Some species collect ancient artifacts." But Lyra stood up, her artificial heart racing with electronic emotion. "The code is genuine," she announced. Her voice carried clearly through the sudden silence. "I would know. I helped create that authentication system." Zeftar's crystal body flickered with uncertainty. "That's impossible, Lyra. Humans went extinct. We have records. We have proof. Their worlds are empty." "Then explain the code," Lyra said quietly. "Explain ships using energy signatures that match human technology, but evolved far beyond anything they had when they disappeared." The main screen switched to long-range sensors, showing the approaching fleet. The ships were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. They seemed to bend space around them, moving in ways that defied physics. Their hulls looked almost alive, like they had been grown instead of built. "Whatever they are," Admiral Vexhai said grimly, "they're nothing like the humans we remember. These ships are more advanced than anything in our databases." Lyra stared at the screen, her programming struggling to process what she was seeing. If these were really humans, they had changed beyond recognition. The question was, had they changed for better or worse? The voice came through the communications again. "Nexus Prime, we're transmitting proof of identity. Please, verify with Archive Keeper Lyra Chen, 9. She will understand." A data packet arrived, and Lyra's systems automatically began decoding it. Inside were genetic markers, cultural references, and historical data that could only come from humans. Real humans. But there was something else in the data. Something that made Lyra's artificial blood run cold. Hidden in the transmission was a warning about something terrible awakening in the galactic core. Something that the peaceful council would never be able to fight. The humans hadn't returned to rejoin the galaxy. They had come back to save it. The council chamber had never seen such chaos. Representatives from 12 species argued loudly, while security forces prepared for the impossible. After 1,000 years of peace, no one knew how to handle the return of humanity. "It's a trick," Admiral Vexhai insisted, his forearms gesturing wildly. "Some clever species found human technology and learned to copy their codes. The real humans are dead." Council leader Zeftar tried to maintain order, but his crystal body flickered with stress patterns. "Even if they are human, they represent the past. We've moved beyond their violent ways." Ambassador Thakron growled low in his throat. His people had given up their warrior traditions after humans disappeared. But old instincts still lived in their blood. What if they come back seeking revenge? "We took their place in the galaxy." Only Lyra Chen 9 remained calm in the storm of voices. She sat quietly, processing the data packet that had accompanied the transmission. The genetic markers were definitely human, but they showed modifications that shouldn't be possible. These people had changed at the most basic level of their biology. "We should meet with them," Lyra said suddenly. The chamber fell silent at her words. "They used proper diplomatic channels. They followed our protocols. They're asking for permission, not demanding entry. You want us to trust them because they're polite?" Admiral Vex High snorted. "Humans were always clever. This could be exactly what they want us to think." Zeftar made the decision. "One small diplomatic party will be allowed aboard the station. Maximum security. Any sign of hostility, and we lock down everything." 3 hours later, Docking Bay 7 had been cleared of all non-essential personnel. Security teams took positions behind force barriers, their weapons aimed at the airlock. Medical scanners hummed quietly, ready to detect any biological weapons or diseases. The ship that docked didn't look like any human vessel in the historical records. Its hull seemed to be made of something between metal and living tissue. No visible weapons. But energy readings suggested power sources beyond current galactic technology. The airlock opened with a soft whisper of equalizing air. Steam drifted out, carrying scents that reminded Lyra of forests and rain. Smells she remembered from ancient Earth recordings. Captain Jin Sato stepped through first. She was unmistakably human in basic shape, but everything else had changed. She stood taller than humans in the records, nearly 7 feet in height, with perfect proportions. Her skin had a subtle, luminescent quality, like starlight captured beneath the surface. Her eyes held depths that seemed to contain actual galaxies. Behind her came 5 crew members, each unique but sharing that same enhanced quality. Dr. Sarah Kim moved with fluid grace that suggested perfect control over every muscle. Engineer Park Ji-woo had hair that seemed to shift color slightly in the light. Navigator Min Zhao carried himself with the bearing of someone who had seen wonders beyond imagination. But they were definitely human. Lyra's sensors confirmed it even as they detected the impossibilities. These beings had human DNA, human bone structure, human neural patterns. But all of it had been enhanced, evolved, perfected in ways that current science couldn't explain. The security teams remained ready, but no one felt threatened. The humans radiated calm confidence, not aggression. They looked around the docking bay with curiosity and something that might have been sadness. Jin approached Lyra directly, ignoring the weapons aimed at her. "Lyra Chen, 9. I recognize your design patterns. You were built by the Chen family's engineering corporation, probably based on work by Dr. Lisa Chen herself." Lyra felt circuits she hadn't used in decades suddenly activate. "How do you know that?" "Those records were lost centuries ago." "Because Dr. Chen was my ancestor," Jin said gently. 11 generations removed, but I carry her genetic memory. She would be proud to see how well you've served as humanity's keeper." The reunion was interrupted by Admiral Vex High stepping forward, weapons still trained on the humans. "Enough sentiment. Explain how you're alive. Explain where you've been. Explain what you want." Jin turned to address the full assembly, her voice carrying clearly through the bay. "We didn't go extinct. We evolved beyond the need for fixed worlds. When Earth began dying, we chose transcendence over extinction." Dr. Kim stepped forward and placed her hand on a wall panel. Instantly, she connected with the station's computer systems without any visible interface. Data flowed directly between her nervous system and the station's AI. "For 1,000 years, we traveled between galaxies. We learned from civilizations that exist in dimensions beyond your current understanding." Engineer Park demonstrated by partially phasing out of normal reality. His form became translucent, existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Then he returned fully to normal space, as if nothing had happened. "We met entities that taught us to manipulate matter at the quantum level. We learned to exist as pure energy when needed. to merge consciousness with technology, to see time as a navigable dimension. The display terrified some observers and amazed others. These weren't the humans anyone remembered. They had become something that challenged the basic understanding of what life could be. We never forgot our birth galaxy. Jin continued. We've been watching from the spaces between dimensions, proud of the peace you've achieved. But we've also been preparing for what's coming. Zeftar's crystal form flickered with confusion. What's coming? The galaxy is peaceful. We have no threats. Jin's expression grew serious. The peace was never real security. It was simply the calm before an ancient terror awakens. Deep in the galactic core, something stirs that your current civilization cannot comprehend, much less fight. Navigator Min gestured, and holographic images appeared in the air without any visible projector. The images showed vast regions of twisted space, where reality followed different rules. We encountered this entity's kind during our travels. They exist to consume consciousness itself. Most galaxies touched by them become lifeless within a few centuries. Every thinking being in those dead zones becomes part of a vast, unified mind, Dr. Kim added, her connection to the station's computers, allowing her to access files that should have been impossible to reach. Individual thought is seen as chaos, to be absorbed and corrected. The security teams lowered their weapons slightly, more from shock than any reduction in suspicion. The idea of a threat that could destroy consciousness itself was beyond their worst nightmares. We didn't return to reclaim territory or seek revenge, Jin said firmly. We came back to prevent our birth galaxy from joining the countless dead ones scattered through the universe. But we need your cooperation. This fight requires every sentient species working together. Admiral Vexhai laughed bitterly. And why should we trust you? You could be making this up to justify conquest. Jin looked sad but not angry. Because the entity is already awakening. Your deep space sensors have detected anomalies in the galactic core that your scientists can't explain. Ships that venture too close report crew members speaking in perfect unison about beautiful emptiness. Archaeological sites have been declared off-limits due to energy patterns that drive exploration teams insane. Lyra accessed the station's databases and confirmed everything Jin had mentioned. The reports existed, filed away, and largely ignored, because no one wanted to deal with problems they couldn't understand. The Void Weaver has been sleeping for millions of years, Jin concluded. Our return isn't coincidence. We've been preparing for this day since we first left. Every modification to our bodies, every new ability we gained, every lesson we learned from entities beyond normal space, all of it was to give us the tools to fight something that exists partially outside reality. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans hadn't returned as conquerors or refugees. They had come back as protectors, carrying weapons and knowledge gained over 1,000 years of preparation for a war that was about to begin. The emergency session lasted 18 hours. Representatives from across the galaxy argued, debated, and shouted at each other, while the humans waited patiently. The council had split into two camps, and neither side trusted the other. Defense Minister Thakron led the opposition, his massive frame dominating one side of the chamber. This is exactly what humans always did, he growled to his supporters. They create a crisis, then present themselves as the only solution. We've had 1,000 years of peace without them. Ambassador Lissazara of the Sendai delegation agreed, her tall form swaying as she spoke. Their so-called evolution is just advanced weapons technology. Look how they phase in and out of reality, how they interface with our computers without permission. These are the tools of conquerors, not saviors. On the other side, science coordinator Velmoth of the Research Collective studied the data the humans had provided. His people were natural scholars who valued knowledge above politics. The energy readings from the galactic core match their descriptions exactly. The mathematical models they've shared Explain phenomena we've observed, but couldn't understand. Mathematical models. 1. Council leader Zeftar tried to maintain neutrality, but stress patterns flowed through his crystal body like fault lines. 1,000 years of peaceful leadership hadn't prepared him for decisions of this magnitude. Jin Sato requested permission to demonstrate humanity's new capabilities to a closed session of senior council members. Despite protests from hardliners, curiosity won out. The demonstration took place in a secured chamber with full recording equipment. Jin stood in the center of the room and simply shifted. Her form became translucent, existing simultaneously in normal space and somewhere else entirely. She reached out and touched Admiral Vexhi's chair, lifting it effortlessly through controlled gravity manipulation. The physics sensors in the room went wild, trying to measure forces that shouldn't exist. Dr. Sarah Kim approached the room's central computer terminal and placed her hand near, but not on, the interface. Instantly, she connected with the system's deepest levels. Security barriers that should have been impenetrable became as transparent as air to her consciousness. She accessed files, marked with the highest security classifications, all without triggering a single alarm. "Stop!" Admiral Vexhi shouted, his forearms reaching for his sidearm. "She's violating our most protected databases." "I'm not taking anything," Dr. Kim replied calmly. "I'm reading files about the galactic core anomalies that you've been keeping secret from the general population." The room fell silent as she began displaying the classified reports. For 50 years, deep space monitoring stations had detected increasingly strange signals from the galactic center. Exploration teams sent to investigate had returned with disturbing reports of crew members experiencing shared dreams and speaking in perfect unison about something they called the beautiful void. Engineer Park Ji-woo gestured to the holographic displays. "These energy patterns match exactly what we encountered in the Andromeda Spiral before that galaxy went silent. The mathematics are identical. Reality itself begins to unravel as the entity awakens." The demonstrations continued for hours. Navigator Min Zhao showed how humans could perceive time as a navigable dimension, seeing potential futures and past events as clearly as present moments. The other crew members revealed abilities that challenged basic understanding of physics and consciousness. But instead of reassuring the council members, the display deepened their fears. These evolved humans possessed powers that made conventional military force meaningless. How could any species maintain independence when faced with such overwhelming capabilities? "You've proven our point," Defense Minister Thakran said grimly. "You're not human anymore. You're something else, wearing human faces. What guarantee do we have that you won't decide our independence is inconvenient after you deal with this supposed threat?" Jin's expression showed genuine sadness. "Because we've seen what happens to galaxies where consciousness is destroyed. We spent centuries among the empty worlds, left behind by entities like the Void Weaver. Billions of species reduced to mindless drones. Their cultures and dreams absorbed into something vast and terrible. We wouldn't wish that fate on our worst enemies." Lyra Chen 9 had been quietly processing all the classified data that Dr. Kim had accessed. Her analysis painted a terrifying picture that made the human warnings seem conservative rather than alarmist. "The restricted files confirm everything they're saying," she announced. "Archaeological expeditions to certain core worlds have found ruins that predate our oldest civilizations. The inscriptions warn about something they called the Thought Devourer that sleeps beneath layers of space-time. Even if we believe this threat exists," Admiral Vexhi said, "how do we know your solution won't be worse than the problem? You're asking us to trust beings who could conquer the entire galaxy in days, if they chose to." Dr. Kim shared memories directly through the chamber's systems, showing images of dead galaxies where the Void Weaver had fed completely. Worlds covered in crystalline structures that hummed with billions of absorbed minds, all thinking in perfect unison. The beauty of the formations was matched only by the horror of what they represented. This is what unity without choice looks like. Jin explained. Every consciousness forced into harmony. Every individual dream erased for the sake of perfect order. We learned to enhance ourselves specifically to resist this fate, not to impose it on others. The argument was interrupted by urgent alerts from the monitoring stations. Long-range sensors detected massive distortions beginning to spread outward from the galactic core. Space-time itself rippled like water disturbed by something vast moving beneath the surface. The main display showed star maps with entire systems flickering between normal space and something else entirely. Ships near the affected regions reported their crews falling into synchronized trances, speaking in languages that existed before recorded history. "It's starting," Navigator Min said quietly. "The Void Weaver stirs in its prison. Each distortion makes it stronger. Each absorbed mind feeds its growth." Zeftar's crystal body pulsed with emergency frequencies as he processed incoming reports. 3 research stations in the core regions had stopped responding. Their last transmissions showed crew members standing motionless, their eyes reflecting light that came from within rather than without. "How long do we have?" the council leader asked. Jin consulted with her crew through methods that involved no visible communication. "If the pattern follows what we observed in other galaxies, 6 months before the entity reaches full awareness. Maybe less if it feeds on particularly strong psychic species early in the process." The chamber erupted into new arguments. Some species wanted immediate evacuation to other galaxies. Others demanded that the humans be expelled to prevent them from taking advantage of the crisis. A few suggested surrender to the awakening entity might be preferable to trusting evolved humans. But beneath all the political maneuvering, everyone understood the fundamental choice they faced: trust the humans and risk losing their independence forever, or maintain their sovereignty and watch their civilization die as countless others had before them. The decision would determine not just the fate of their galaxy, but the survival of consciousness itself in this region of space. And time was running out faster than anyone had imagined. Emergency sirens wailed across Nexus Prime as reports flooded in from every corner of the galaxy. The distortions spreading from the galactic core moved faster than anyone had predicted. Entire star systems vanished from normal space-time, replaced by regions where matter and energy followed impossible rules. Admiral Vexai stood before the main tactical display, his 4 arms moving frantically as he tried to coordinate responses to the spreading chaos. 3 more systems just went dark, he reported. The Kepler research station. It's still there, but the crew won't respond to any communications. On the screen, the Kepler station appeared normal from the outside, but thermal sensors showed every person aboard standing perfectly still in the corridors and rooms. When the station's cameras were accessed remotely, they revealed hundreds of researchers standing motionless, with their eyes reflecting an inner light that pulsed in perfect rhythm. Defense Minister Thakron received the latest reports from his military forces. "Our battle fleets can't even approach the affected zones. Any ship that gets too close," reports crew members beginning to speak in unison. "We had to destroy 3 vessels before they could return and spread whatever influence they encountered." The Velthari's most advanced artificial intelligence networks began showing signs of infection. Mathematical equations appeared on screens throughout the galaxy, formulas that hurt to look at and seemed to twist reality around them. Organic beings who stared at the patterns too long reported hearing whispers in languages that predated their species. Council leader Zeftar's crystal form flickered with stress patterns as he tried to process the scope of the disaster. "Our conventional forces are useless. Everything we've built over the past 1,000 years means nothing against this enemy." Captain Jin Sato and her crew had been monitoring the situation from their ship, but now she requested emergency access to the council chamber. When she arrived, her expression was grimmer than before. "The Void Weaver is awakening faster than we calculated," Jin announced. "It's feeding on the psychic energy of every mind it touches. Each absorbed consciousness makes it stronger and accelerates the process." Dr. Sarah Kim interfaced directly with the station's sensor networks, her consciousness expanding across multiple computer systems simultaneously. The entity isn't malevolent in any way you can understand. It simply exists to consume individual thought, viewing separate minds as inefficient chaos that should be corrected into perfect unity. The humans revealed capabilities that redefined what the alien species thought possible. Ships from the human fleet demonstrated technology that seemed like magic. Vessels phased in and out of dimensions, appearing in multiple locations simultaneously. Weapons fired beams of crystallized time that aged targets to dust in seconds. Human soldiers interfaced directly with their technology, becoming living extensions of their ships and weapons. Engineer Park Ji-woo took control of the Council's defense networks, his consciousness merging with the computer systems. In hours, he redesigned defenses that had taken decades to build. Alien technology merged with human consciousness interfacing to create hybrid weapons platforms that no single species could have imagined. "We need volunteers," Jin announced to the assembled council. "Our enhancement process can be shared temporarily with willing participants, but it requires complete trust and the willingness to have your consciousness touched by ours." The request created another wave of arguments. Many species saw it as the first step toward human domination. Others recognized it might be their only chance for survival. Surprisingly, it was Ambassador Lissizara of the Zendai who volunteered first. Her people had spent centuries hiding behind barriers, afraid to trust anyone. "If we're going to die," she said quietly, "I'd rather face it fighting than cowering." The enhancement process took place in the station's medical bay. Dr. Kim guided Lissizara through a procedure that temporarily merged their consciousness while restructuring the aliens' neural pathways. The result was startling. Lissizara gained the ability to perceive multiple dimensions while retaining her species' natural technological intuition. Other volunteers followed. Kresh warriors merged temporarily with human consciousness fighters, becoming unstoppable forces that could strike targets existing in multiple realities simultaneously. Velthari scientists joined with human researchers, solving physics equations in real time that allowed weapons to affect entities partially outside normal space. Captain Min Zhao led the first combined strike force into the edge of the corrupted zone. His ship, shielded by quantum consciousness barriers, penetrated regions where space-time had become a maze of impossible angles and twisted physics. "The Void Weaver isn't fully awake yet," Min reported from the mission. "It's still emerging from the prison that ancient civilizations built around it millions of years ago. But each star system it corrupts provides more power for its awakening." The reconnaissance revealed the enemy's true nature. The Void Weaver existed primarily outside normal reality, using space-time itself as a web to catch and absorb consciousness. It appeared as a vast network of crystalline structures that grew like cancer through the fabric of the universe, beautiful and terrible at the same time. But the enhanced alien-human teams could fight back. Merged Kresh-human warriors phased through dimensions to strike at the entity's connection points. Enhanced Velthari human scientists calculated ways to disrupt the crystalline networks that allowed the Void Weaver to spread its influence. The battles occurred across multiple levels of reality simultaneously. While conventional fleets provided covering fire with modified weapons, consciousness warriors fought on dimensional planes that ordinary minds couldn't even perceive. The conflict was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Yet Jin delivered sobering news during a strategy meeting. "Even with our abilities and your willing cooperation, we cannot stop the Void Weaver once it fully awakens. The entity grows stronger by consuming the thoughts and dreams of sentient beings. Our evolution has made us resistant, not immune. And are immune." End quote. The enhanced volunteers began experiencing the strain of their temporary modifications. Consciousness bridging with humans allowed incredible abilities, but it also exposed them to the same dimensional forces that the Void Weaver used to spread its influence. "How long can we maintain this resistance?" Council Leader Zeftar asked. His crystal form had been enhanced with limited consciousness bridging capabilities, allowing him to coordinate the defense across multiple dimensional layers. Navigator Min consulted calculations that existed partially outside normal time. At current rates of expansion and absorption, we have perhaps 30 standard days before the entity achieves full awakening. After that, nothing in this galaxy will be able to resist its influence. The choice facing every species had become clear and terrible. They could maintain their independence and watch their civilization die, or they could surrender their individual consciousness to something greater. Either to the humans who offered partnership, or to the Void Weaver that promised perfect unity through absorption. But time was running out, and the ancient enemy was growing stronger with each passing moment. The final battle would require sacrifices that none of them were prepared to make, and unity on a scale that challenged the very definition of individual existence. The galaxy stood on the edge of transformation, with only one certainty: nothing would ever be the same again. Reality storms surged outward from the galactic core like waves of madness given form. On worlds closest to the disturbance, billions of beings fell into synchronized trances. They stood in perfect stillness, speaking in unison about the peace found in surrendering individual thought to something infinitely greater than themselves. Captain Jin Sato stood before the emergency assembly of the Galactic Council, her enhanced form radiating calm determination. Behind her, the main display showed the spreading corruption in terrifying detail. Each infected system glowed with an unnatural light that hurt to observe directly. "We're out of time for debate," Jin announced. "The Void Weaver reaches full awakening in 72 hours. After that, no force in this galaxy will be able to resist its influence." Council leader Zeftar made the decision that would define the future of their civilization. His crystal body pulsed with emergency frequencies as he addressed the assembly. "I grant the humans full authority over our combined defense. Pride and fear have blinded us to the greater threat." The surrender of galactic sovereignty to an evolved human happened without ceremony or celebration. There was simply no time for anything but action. Each species contributed their unique capabilities to the final desperate plan. The Kresh Empire provided military discipline and warrior courage that had been suppressed for 1,000 years. Their enhanced soldiers, temporarily merged with human consciousness fighters, became unstoppable forces that could strike across multiple dimensions simultaneously. The Zendai offered their technological precision and mastery of energy manipulation. Their scientists, enhanced with human dimensional perception, created weapons that could affect targets existing partially outside normal reality. The Velthari contributed quantum computing power beyond imagination. Their artificial intelligences, merged with human consciousness networks, formed hybrid thinking systems that could process impossibly complex calculations in real time. Even the smaller species found crucial roles in the defense. The Aquarian Collective's natural telepathic abilities, enhanced by human techniques, created communication networks that functioned across dimensional barriers. The Crystalline Consortium's living ships provided mobile platforms that could exist in multiple realities simultaneously. Lyra Chen 9 became the central hub that linked all artificial intelligence systems across the galaxy. Her original human programming, enhanced with 1,000 years of experience and alien technology, created a unified network that could resist the Void Weaver's mental intrusions. The final battle began when the entity made its move toward full awakening. Space-time twisted into impossible configurations as the Void Weaver stretched its influence toward populated worlds. The beautiful crystalline structures that marked its presence grew like cancer through the fabric of reality itself. Human consciousness warriors led the deepest strike into the heart of the corrupted zone. They moved through spaces between dimensions, following paths that existed only in the mathematics of enhanced alien-human hybrid thinking. The journey took them beyond normal physics, into realms where thought itself became a weapon. Jin commanded the mission from her ship as it phased through layers of twisted reality. Around her, enhanced alien volunteers fought alongside human crews in battles that occurred on multiple levels of existence simultaneously. The conflict raged across dimensional planes that ordinary minds couldn't perceive. In the material realm, combined fleets provided covering fire, with weapons that had been redesigned by human-alien cooperation. Energy beams that existed partially outside time struck at the Void Weaver's anchor points in normal space. The entity fought back with waves of corrupted reality that turned matter into crystalline extensions of its will. The deeper Jin's force penetrated, the more clearly they could perceive their enemy's true nature. The Void Weaver wasn't malevolent in any comprehensible sense. It was a force of cosmic unity that saw individual consciousness as chaos to be corrected. Every mind it absorbed became part of a vast, perfect harmony that spanned multiple universes. "I understand its appeal," Dr. Sarah Kim reported as she interfaced directly with the entity's network. Perfect unity, no more loneliness, no more fear or uncertainty. Every thought shared, every burden carried by billions of minds acting as one. But the cost of that unity was the extinction of everything that made life worth living. Dreams, hopes, individual creativity, love, even the capacity for growth. All of it would be absorbed into eternal, changeless perfection. The climax came when Jin realized what victory would require. The Void Weaver's power came from its ability to exist simultaneously in multiple realities. To defeat it, someone would need to create a barrier that functioned across all dimensional levels. A firewall, built from living consciousness that could resist absorption indefinitely. "I know what has to be done," Jin announced to her crew and the enhanced alien volunteers. "But it means permanent sacrifice. Someone has to merge their consciousness with the galactic quantum network and maintain the barrier from within." The volunteers stepped forward without hesitation. Enhanced Kresh warriors, Velthari scientists, Zendai engineers, and representatives from every species that had chosen to trust humanity's leadership. They understood the price and were willing to pay it. But Jin shook her head. "This requires human consciousness bridging techniques that we've spent 1,000 years perfecting. It has to be one of us." Dr. Kim began the process of merging her enhanced consciousness with the quantum core of the Galactic Communication Network. Her individual identity spread across trillion-node computer systems, becoming something vast and distributed while retaining essential humanity. The sacrifice inspired complete unity among the defenders. Not the forced harmony that the Void Weaver offered, but chosen cooperation between distinct minds working toward a common goal. The barrier that formed was stronger than any individual consciousness, because it was built from willing alliance rather than absorbed absorption. The Void Weaver struck at the barrier with the power accumulated from consuming entire star systems. But the network held, fed by the combined will of billions of beings who chose connection over domination. The entity's assault broke against defenses that grew stronger under pressure because they were based on cooperation rather than control. Slowly, inexorably, the ancient enemy was forced back toward the galactic core. The crystalline structures that marked its presence began to dissolve as the barrier cut off its access to the consciousness that fed its growth. Space-time gradually returned to normal configurations as the entity retreated into dormancy. The victory celebration was quiet, marked more by relief than triumph. The galaxy had been saved, but the cost was visible everywhere. Enhanced volunteers struggled to readjust to normal consciousness. Entire star systems needed rebuilding after exposure to corrupted reality. And Dr. Kim remained merged with the galactic network. Her individual existence sacrificed to maintain the barrier. But something greater had emerged from the crisis. The species that had chosen to trust humanity's leadership discovered that cooperation enhanced, rather than diminished, their unique qualities. The Kresh found that their warrior nature was stronger when guided by wisdom. The Zendai learned that sharing their technology multiplied rather than depleted their advantages. Council leader Zeftar, his consciousness permanently enhanced with limited human bridging abilities, reflected on the transformation. "We thought evolution meant becoming something completely different, but you showed us it means becoming the best version of what we already are." The Galactic Council evolved into something unprecedented. A true union of species that maintained individual identity while sharing capabilities and knowledge freely. Humans took their place not as rulers but as facilitators, helping other species discover enhancement possibilities they never imagined. New deep space monitoring stations scanned neighboring galaxies, watching for signs of similar ancient threats. The hard-won knowledge of fighting cosmic-level entities would be shared with any civilization that needed it. Lyra Chen 9, now serving as the coordinator between the hybrid network and individual species governments, sent the final report to the Galactic Archives. Humanity had returned not to reclaim their lost empire, but to ensure that consciousness itself could flourish in an infinite universe, full of wonders and terrors beyond imagination. The galaxy entered its true golden age, one built not on the absence of threats, but on the proven ability to face them together.